family, romance, pit. Visit Bandsworth. It's rate good.
So that's Bandsworth.
Today may have been the most ridiculous hour of gaming I've had all of 2024. If you're new to this, hi, I'm Mexiclaw. If you're coming back, hi again. Today, I must implore all of you to stop what you're doing and, well, stop what you're doing after this is over and download the Thank Goodness You're Here demo. I can comfortably report that it'll easily be one of the funniest things you will play all year. Today I had some time, so I decided to finally go through my Steam library and play a few more of the demos that I've been waiting ever since Summer Game Fest. And I finally got around to playing the one that many people have been looking forward to, Thank Goodness You're Here. Now, in no small part, people are looking forward to this game because it's published by the same people that made the other indie darling, Untitled Goose Game, about the goose that is basically a domestic terrorist. And while that game is similarly silly and we could talk about that for a while, what I must bring to your attention after we talk about the demo, because I need to talk about that demo, is the game that the developers Cole Sepper actually made prior to this. A game dev studio based in Yorkshire that seemed to revel at making weird and zany games. And while Thank Goodness You're Here was definitely them in their element with how relentlessly funny it is, the game that they made before it, dude. There's no other way to put this. It's was one of the most uncomfortable 20 minutes I've had in a long time. Not so uncomfortable I couldn't recommend it. In fact, I actively would recommend this to someone to traumatize them a little bit. But I don't quite even understand how someone gets to the thought process of making this game, but I'm not mad at it. As a quick disclaimer, usually these things are a bit more scripted, but I have a rule when it comes to demos. Since they are just demos and not full games, I'm not going to give them scripted, sat down, thought out reviews. I've got full notes here that I'm going to be referencing, but ultimately, this is about vibes. Thank Goodness You're Here is an absurd comedy platformer set in the bizarre northern English town of Barnsworth. As a traveling salesman, take the time to see the sights and meet the locals who are very eager to give you a series of increasingly odd jobs.
Thank goodness you're here.
The best way I can describe this, and the reason I'm going to say pick it up, is it is relentlessly funny. Every single second is dedicated to delivery punchline, whether it's the setting, whether it's the dialogue, whether it's the way the puzzles are solved, whether it's the sounds being made. It is constantly playing with your expectations of what to expect, and I freaking love it, dude. There were multiple times through this thing where I actively laughed out loud. Even as something as simple as entering a room is turned into a joke.
While you're down there, lad, give those barrels a shake up, won't you?
And I love that these little attentions to details kind of just add to the full absurdity of it. Like, even the little interacting mechanic where it's just a yellow dude punching people like he's Blue Regard from Father's Home of Imaginary Friend. If you don't know that show, please go look it up. If you do know that show, do you remember the scene where Blue is in the mall kicking people on the shin? It has the exact same energy, and I love it. The entire world is obviously very intricate and detailed, not just because of how it's actually drawn and how everything like smoothly ends up going together, and how, as you will see if you play it yourself, parts of the game naturally evolve and elevate so that stuff that's like on complete other side to this little square that you're working with in the demo still end up interacting with each other in a short amount of time. It's such a lively affair. It's just awesome. And speaking of lively, I love the voice acting in this. Like, this thing is properly voice acted. Full on performance just from what was here. People are giving tens upon tens upon tens. I'm looking forward to seeing the full fleshed out lines of things, but just from this short little glimpse, these people are really like, yeah, we're going to nail this. We're going to make this goofy, which I love the fact, because when it's easy to do jokes with games without voice acting, obviously, but you can always, with voice actors, capture tone and delivery in a way that you just leave up to the reader a bit more when you have to imagine how something's being delivered, which is no shame against that. I just played a visual novel recently, Tavern Talk, that had a lot of funny jokes in it, and that had no voice acting in it, but seeing voice acting in a game too really adds the extra flavor of like, okay, I'm seeing the vision. I love how willing it is to mess with perspective. Like, some of the mini games and like puzzles that you get thrown in here very suddenly have no problem with completely changing how the screen looks in front of you and making you discover yourself how to control this new setting, but it's never meant to be like overtly at least least in this demo, it's not meant to be overtly difficult or alienating. It's just kind of like you get brought into the joke almost, and as you start getting into the bit, you realize, oh my god, this is where the punchline is going because of the change of perspective. I must prove the point of this by showing you what was easily one of my favorite jokes from this demo, the murder of the roses.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you.
The demo, if it's going to be representative for a game, shows that there was a lot of love and intentionality done throughout the whole process. And this is actually a great point to mention something that when I first played the demo, I wasn't a huge fan of at first, but when I played the developer's game prior to Thank Goodness You're Here, the one that we're going to talk about in a second, I actually appreciated it in hindsight. Throughout the demo, there was no button prompts. Something from even as simple as when you start up the demo, the game lets you figure out to press the A button yourself to like jump up and like actually get going on your little adventure. At first, I wasn't a huge fan of that because even as something as simple as button prompting, which can be easy to figure out, I'm always like, I rather you treat people like idiots, because sometimes I am one, and just tell me which buttons to press, just in case if like it suddenly changes. That way it's just easier to get the uptake. But these guys, even from the last game, put the controllers on the Steam page, so I'm realizing that it's less about them like being lazy about it, which I didn't think it was, but it was like that's like just to get rid of that, and more about no, discovery is kind of part of their whole mantra, it looks like, of just, we want you to press these buttons, we want you to figure it out yourself, we want to see how you're meant to interact with the environment naturally through a bit of self-discovery rather than us leading your hand with it. So that's just something that I learned to appreciate just from playing the game before it. But again, to wrap up the Thank Goodness You're Here, you should pick it up. It really is only 20 minutes. It makes me really excited for the full release. I think you'll be really excited about it too. We need to talk about the game they made beforehand. I already known that the publisher behind this was also behind Untitled Goose Game, but I was still curious about what the devs themselves did, so I clicked on the name on their Steam page and realized that they only made one game beforehand called The Good Time Garden, which turned out to also already be on my wishlist. I didn't even realize it. And so I actually decided to play it because I saw the magic word standing in front of me right on the screen, free. So that was a pretty big incentive. And when I started looking at the reviews, none of them got even past a half hour of playtime. So I'm like, oh, well. So I downloaded it really quickly, and now I am not the same. Now I am not the same. You know, sometimes curiosity doesn't kill the cat. Sometimes curiosity just makes the cat want to go back in the box. I feel like the best way to describe this game would just be to read off the note that I made on my phone while playing it. I think the closest I could get would be, I tell my mom I played this game, but I would never have wanted her to see me play it. Like, she'd be intrigued, but it'd be like 30 seconds before she started screaming, "Oh my, what is this?" I had to add that part because apparently I capitalized that when I wrote it. Yeah, the game's freaky. Developers don't even try to pretend like it's not. Just from the Steam synopsis alone, explore a throbbing pink world full of strange naked creatures to gather food for your friend in this short, surreal experience. Published by themselves actually and released in 2019. Yeah, dude, I just don't understand how to explain this game. It is very self-guided. It wants you to discover the buttons yourself, and you have pretty simple features: picking up stuff, punching stuff, and watering the ground around you, which what might be snot, what might be pee, it doesn't really matter. It's nature. It's impossible to look at the game and not realize the very explicit human connections being made and being intermixed with these animal body parts. And then you got this onion thing that you're feeding that has a very just almost the most uncomfortable thing out of the whole, which isn't like any body parts just hanging loose, but really just a facial expression of pleasure and almost overindulgence being made the entire time. It's the definition of an alien experience. You're kind of just thrown into this world, and there's never a sense of danger either. You're not like at risk of being harmed, and despite you actively feeding this so-called friend of yours what feels like the offspring of these animals, none of them are ever chasing you once you take their, I don't know if they're children, they're separated body parts, just parts of themselves. I don't know. That's the whole point, I think. Even when there was a point in the game, there's this point in the game. The game is also voice acted, by the way, which is also really nice. It looks like these guys really like making sure they have voice actors in their stuff. Where you basically get mocked by this entire troop of like what feels like schoolyard kids.
Butthole man, butthole man, butthole man.
And then as you try to run away from being mocked, one of them starts following you. And that's the most sinister the game felt that entire time, because as you're following, you know their fate. I did bring said kid to it. They jumped in themselves. They fully were aware. And so again, it's like, it's probably not even a kid. This is a whole alien planet. I don't know if they even have a concept of numbers on the damn thing. And all of it is interlaced with almost feels like this sinister style of Adventure Time humor. Not so much in the jokes being shared, but in the comedic timing of it, and the uncomfortable close-ups all of a sudden that are at a sense of realism you weren't expecting from this otherwise very cartoonish and surreal world you're asked to basically adventure. No pun intended. It's one of those things that I would actively suggest to someone because I know what's going to confuse them. Probably would disturb a good few of them, and they'd all be in their right to feel those emotions. You have a weird time wanting to call all of this wrong because nothing in your environment is treating it as wrong, which isn't an excuse for immoral actions, obviously, but this is obviously not our human world. This is just something from a UK guy's head, which is much scarier. And I'm not even going to attempt to explain how it ended. Like, it's just, I don't, no. It's very clear this game was meant to be an experience, a proof of concept, or just them being like, we have something that we need to get out of our heads, and it's ridiculous and weird and crazy, and someone's going to love it, and they were right. They were right. They could have definitely made a longer game, because even the little puzzles that were involved in this were like, fun, and I could see a whole world being done with just this concept. But it's clear that they were like, if we push this past 25 minutes, we're not sure we're going to be able to look ourselves in the mirror later. And to know that those guys went from this to this makes me even more excited for Thank Goodness You're Here now. But yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say. I know it might be odd to do a completely separate video for this, considering I have a whole other video that's like includes 9 demos, and now this one has just 1 demo. But like this was such an odd hour of my life that I had to just talk about and put more people on. I love giving energy to silly things. So hopefully this encourages you to go check it out yourself. Tell me how you like it. Till then, see you later.